starting with the Trisha series part 3. Part 3. Hey there. As a lot of you know, I have been taking it a little bit easy the past week or two, for very good reason, I'm sure you know. And we will be seeing longer form content like the Trisha series next week. But I did want to hop on camera to talk just for a little bit about this topic that has been on my mind and on a lot of our minds, and also to give you a couple of announcements towards the end. So, a lot of you have been asking about my thoughts on Jeffree Starr's interview with Hansen. Or rather, would it be fair to say Chris Hansen's interview with Jeffree Starr? I think that's more appropriate. And the point of this interview was to address Jeffree Starr's experience with Dahvie Vanity of the band Blood on the Dance Floor, around 2011 or so, I believe. And in particular, some very contradicting tweets from Jeffree. Some from way back in the day where he very publicly stated that Dahvie was involved in some very inappropriate and illegal activity with underage fans. But then later in tweets offering his endless support and referring to Dahvie as his brother. And if any of you saw that interview, I don't think you would find it surprising that I was pretty disappointed in Chris Hansen. I felt that Jeffree really took the reins on that interview and ran with it, which really prevented Chris Hansen from being able to really ask those hard-hitting questions and really push Jeffree on anything he might have said that was contradictory or unclear. And it was apparent to me that Jeffree knew what he was doing. In particular, he did say something like, I think it's really important we address those tweets.
They want us to talk about my tweets, Chris, and I think that it's very important to address it.
Kind of bringing things up that he knew would come up, but bringing them up on his time and on his terms. So that alone gave me the impression that this whole interview was a very calculated move on Jeffree's part, that he knew what he was doing going into this, essentially. And just because Jeffree took the reins does not mean that Chris Hansen would not have been able to stop him and kind of take control of the interview again, and he didn't do that, and that's what was disappointing. You know, we've seen commentary YouTubers and other YouTubers interview people in the past and fail to ask hard-hitting questions, but this being Chris Hansen and him having a long-standing career of talking about these things, reporting on these things, and interviewing people, I was just surprised. I was surprised and let down, but maybe that just goes to show you how smart and manipulative Jeffree Starr can be. I found a lot, if not everything, Jeffree said to be very contradictory. Throughout the interview, he keeps saying that he saw Dahvie commit a lot of inappropriate behavior, but then later saying that he knew of nothing that was illegal.
Do you remember things that Dahvie Vanity did that would horrify you today?
Oh, 100%. The things that I've seen were very offensive. And looking back, it was the way that he was such a master manipulator at making things seem not as crazy as they were. So yeah, I've witnessed him be very appropriate with people that were underage. Have I witnessed an actual crime? No.
Inappropriate, but not illegal. So how do you define the two, Jeffree? Bothersome. He also said that Dahvie is a very manipulative person, that he would show one side of himself to some people and another side to other people so that he could get his way.
When talking to a lot of people from the past, some of them literally have seen nothing and they're like, yeah, he's great. And other people have really horrific stories. So that 100% makes sense. It's like if he needed to use you for something, then he's only going to show you his best version, which he did to me a lot of the times. He wanted to use me. He wanted to get bigger from doing a song together, going on tour, trying to use my name. So I could definitely see that 100% happening.
Yet he said that he came to believe Dahvie was innocent because he blindly trusted another member of the band who said that she knew of nothing illegal going on with Dahvie. So Jeffree Starr is smarter than that. And especially just I'll say it. To be as manipulative and calculating and smart as Jeffree is, I find it hard to believe that he wouldn't be able to suss out that sort of behavior in somebody else.
Did I see weird, inappropriate behavior? Yes. Did I call him a child? Yes, because at the time I really believed it. I thought that what people were saying and the weird things that were behind the scenes going on, that they were all true.
And then later he even goes on to say that he was never friends with Davi, that he was friends with a couple of members of Blood on the Dance Floor, but he was never friends with Davi. So I am confused by this tweet where Jeffree calls him brother. I don't know if he explained how that relationship progressed and I just missed that. I don't know. It's all very confusing. I don't think confusing is fair to say. It's all very contradicting. I think it's very clear that Jeffree knew something was going on. Jeffree started to speak up back then. For whatever reason, Jeffree backpedaled on his word, called this guy his brother, and is now saying, oh yeah, I believe this guy is totally a predator and he was probably doing all kinds of illegal stuff and I was just not aware of it. We're gonna call BS on it on this channel. What I would have preferred, of course, would be for Jeffree to have allowed Chris Hansen to run this interview and not be a coward in needing to run it himself. Because let's be honest, that's what drove Jeffree to be the one to ask these questions first on Chris's behalf. That would have been my first wish for this interview. In addition, I wish that Jeffree had simply apologized for the tweet calling Davi his brother, apologized for any support of Davi, and stood by everything else he said. I think he may have experienced some backlash for not reporting certain behavior to the police, but he already said publicly that he saw this stuff. So if he was aware of inappropriate behavior, something tells me that he was aware of illegal behavior like he said back then. So I wish he would have stood by those statements and simply said that referring to Davi as his brother and supporting him in any way was a poor decision on his part. Maybe give his explanation as to why he did that at the time. Although cancel culture is very real, as I've said before, I do think the YouTube audience and most audiences in general are pretty open to seeing people grow. And here I don't see any growth in Jeffree. I see a lot of excuses and contradictions.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people don't understand is that I don't have anything to report. If I actually saw and witnessed something, he would be rotting in jail this very moment.
So I don't feel better about that situation at all. I don't feel better about Jeffree Starr as a person. I don't feel better about how Chris Hansen covered this. So maybe there will be a redo in the works, but something tells me that Jeffree's gonna go on being Jeffree, and I don't think anybody's opinions of him are going to change, whether you be a supporter or a hater or somewhere in between. And what's especially sad is that we're seeing this sort of behavior involving children, involving underage people. We're seeing this behavior from so many different creators on the YouTube platform alone, and that's terrifying. In a recent video, I spoke to TeamPiñata, who is, or hopefully was, I would like to say is the former partner system to DissociaDID, though I don't think that's been confirmed. I believe DissociaDID has severed any ties on social media to TeamPiñata, but I don't think they've confirmed anything for us. But we know that TeamPiñata recently was outed for some illustrations that initially involved this fetish around sneezing, and these drawings that depicted that fetish, but involving either children or alters within that system at a young age in that light. It later came out that there were a lot more of these illustrations, and they didn't involve just sneezing. They were a lot more graphic. They involved body parts that we should never have access to, whether they be in photographs, illustrations, what have you. I myself haven't seen the illustrations, but I have heard other people confirm that these drawings did involve children in ways that these drawings would be considered child pornography. And I have some very real concerns around TeamPiñata's involvement with DissociaDID, seeing as how we know that in these systems, particularly in DissociaDID's system, there are what are called littles. There are child alters that can be brought out or that can just come out based on certain triggers. And it really concerns me to think that TeamPiñata and whoever may have been at the front of this system being alone in a room with potentially one of DissociaDID's littles. That is very concerning to me. I'm not going to get too into it just yet, and I'll explain to you why in a bit. I was very concerned to see this comment yesterday on my most recent video where we talk about TeamPiñata. I was extremely disturbed that somebody would refer to all of these different forms of Padilla as simply a kink. And furthermore, that I am perpetuating a problem. I think she said something like that I was perpetuating rape victim something, that I was perpetuating this problem and I was stigmatizing this kink. I'm disgusted. I brought this comment and this topic up with my friend Ambryn. Here she is here. There is a reason I'm showing you, my friend. And she pointed me in the direction of a video by Blair White on, I don't know if they refer to themselves as MAPs or MAPs, but essentially they are called minor attracted people, and there's a whole community and they support each other and they believe themselves to be an oppressed community, kind of following the transgender community essentially, and sort of trying to lump themselves in with the LGBTQ community. And I'm sure a lot of us can understand why people like Blair White and others in the trans community do not want these minor attracted people to be associated with them in any way. And I want to talk more in depth about that. So this friend of mine, Ambryn, and I were talking, and we've had several discussions around these topics that have come up on my channel, but really are topics that can really be dove into deeper. And we've decided that we are going to put together a janky little podcast for you. I say that, but it might actually turn out to look pretty nice. She is in a different country on another coast. She's over in Vancouver. I'm in Washington, D.C. But we have really great discussions. And so I want to be able to put those on video for you guys and give you a chance to really see what I really think when I dig into this. Ambryn and I both tend to take, I don't want to say a neutral stance on topics, because we certainly don't stand neutral on this topic we're discussing, but we do tend to stay pretty diplomatic and try to understand all different sides. However, we don't agree on details all the time. And that's what I think creates a really good discussion around these sensitive topics. I don't think it would be helpful to you guys for us to be at extreme ends of these spectrums of people who have different opinions on these topics, nor do I think it would be beneficial to have two people talking who simply mirror each other's experiences and thoughts. So I'm looking forward to the discussions we're going to have over there, see how that goes. That will be a recurring thing on my channel if all goes well. I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts on whether or not that's something you're looking forward to. I certainly am. And of course, if it's something I can figure out, we'll figure a way to have it streaming across different platforms. But for now, we're in the early stages of putting this together and hoping that we'll see something in the next 2 weeks, we'll say. In terms of any other updates, you guys can see my set has changed. Yep, there's a lot going on. Welcome to me. This stuff is just a lot more reflective of who I am. You guys have heard that a million times already. If it's not your jam, I hope that that's fine with you and that you're here to hear me talk and not necessarily focus on what's going on behind me. I do hope to see some upgrades to my channel here soon as I get better equipment and things like that. So I'm looking forward to continuing to up the production quality of my videos. I want to let you guys know that I am doing great these days. Like I said, last week was really tough and I've been kind of on the mend this week and I'm just starting to feel better and better. But that is why you haven't seen a ton of videos from me in the past week or so, and we will start seeing more of my usual content, I would say next week, starting with the Trisha series part 3. Yeah, I think those are all the updates I have for you guys now. Just to throw it out there, I did start a Patreon a couple weeks ago and it's going great. We have a lot of content over there for kind of a smaller community. So it is more personal content, things like, I say daily, but they're probably more like 4 times a week or so, vlogs where I talk about things that are going on in my life and things that I wouldn't feel as comfortable talking about publicly. We do have several live chats a week, and I am speaking all to the Oliver tier, which is the $5 tier on my Patreon. And then for the $1 tier, we do have at least one live chat monthly. So, oh, and we have a book club. We have a book club for the Oliver tier as well. And we will be wrapping up our first month of that next week and then starting on our book for May. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how book club goes with our first monthly meeting and everything else that is gonna go on over there on Patreon, as well as this janky little podcast that we have coming up for you guys. So let me know what you guys think about that down in the comments. I'm really excited to hear what you guys have to say. All right, bye.